Well, this VHS tape I made 30 years ago. All I had to read was Dylan, and it got pulled out. Then when I saw that Sean Young was on Later with Bob Costas, my favorite talk show host, interviewing one of my favorite talk show guests, had to do it. I think I tell this story every time I upload something by Sean, but I'm pretty sure she and I went to dancing school together in our teenage years. She grew up in Cleveland Heights, next door to the suburb I grew up in, and so every time I see her interviewed, I think, what could have happened? Not that I haven't had enough drama in my life.
Thanks for staying up later. We're in Los Angeles again. Sean Young is with us. Everywhere I turn, I see the ads for Fatal Instinct, your latest picture, playing the vampish Lola Kane. This had to be a lot of fun.
It definitely was. Yep, it was fun.
Oh, so I'll ask a question like this, and you'll say, oh, it was fun, and maybe I can ask 50, 60 questions in half an hour that way.
Yeah, but I'll give you some good scoops, don't worry.
Carl Reiner said working with you was a pleasure. This is his picture. Now, that is, if not something totally new, sort of out of the ordinary. Here's the guy who directed you, and he had no complaint about you.
I think Carl Reiner is considered to be the nicest man in Hollywood. I mean, he's been around a long time. He's worked with a lot of people, and there's not a single person who doesn't like Carl Reiner, you know. And to have somebody like Carl Reiner, having the nicest man in Hollywood think really, really wonderful things about me is, I think, an accomplishment.
Are you the most dangerous woman in Hollywood?
Ooh, are you scared?
No, not yet. Not yet.
Oh, not really. No, you know, that's all water under or over. How's that phrase go? Over the bridge?
I think it's water over the dam and under the bridge.
Yeah, okay, that's why I got confused. Yeah, that's water under the dam. Right?
If you'd like it to be.
I mean, dangerous. What does that mean? What do you mean? Am I the most dangerous
I think
person?
that was
like a
how
headline. That's not like
that's just what
people,
it was. It was
know?
A headline in one of those stories about your supposedly outrageous behavior on and off the set.
Allegedly.
And attempts to bring attention to yourself. How much of that image do you revel in, and how much of it bothers you?
Well, I don't think I've ever heard of, in the history of Hollywood, a leading man suing their leading lady. And from that moment forward, I have had to live down a whole lot of stuff that was pretty painful and pretty unpleasant for me. You know, and I think, to tell you the truth, I think I've done an amazing job at doing that. And it hasn't been very easy for me. And I've managed to, you know, keep working and keep putting a positive effort into my work and keep believing in myself. And, you know, under circumstances, especially in '89 and '90, which was really the worst 2 years that I had working in show business, I think I've risen above it in a very positive manner.
Just for the sake of clarity, not to drag this stuff back out, we don't deal in any of the particulars.
But have you ever heard of that?
You're talking about. Well, I didn't research it thoroughly as to whether a leading man had ever sued his leading lady.
Have you ever heard of a leading man suing their leading lady? Ever, except once?
Off the top of my head, my answer is no.
Right.
You appeared with James Woods in The Boost. You become involved to whatever extent.
We didn't become involved. That was a real rumor. He wanted to be involved. And I cared for him, and we worked together, and it was a very wonderful movie. If you watch the movie, you can see the chemistry with us in that movie. It's a very powerful movie. And we were sort of set up as actors because we were playing addicts. We were also playing sort of codependent type of people who were stuck together, and really my character couldn't really find a way to get out of that relationship, and then they become addicted to cocaine in the process of the story. So we're really pretty much set up to be very, very close. But I mean, my feeling on a movie is, look, it happens all the time. People get involved all the time in the movie business. But my feeling is, look, if we feel this way in 6 months, call me, okay? But I'm not doing anything with you right now, because it's a, I don't know if you can really understand this, but when you're working closely with people in situations where you actually are kissing them or they're in your face, it changes the stakes. It's not like throwing a pass, although I'm sure that has its own, you know, peculiarities to it. But once somebody's in your face, everything changes, and people do often become involved in Hollywood. But the moment you do that, in my humble opinion, you change the chemistry, and all of a sudden what you're trying to do in terms of the work can change drastically. It can totally destroy it, as a matter of fact. So I'm very careful about that.
So there was no involvement?
There was
James
emotional
on that
involvement,
level.
but there was no physical involvement.
Okay, and then he claimed, again, I'm saying this for clarity's sake, since you introduced the topic, that
Get it over with quick.
that you harassed him and his then fiancée and voodoo dolls and stuff like that, and threatening notes or whatever.
Allegedly.
And he sued you, and the thing was settled out of court.
Yeah, and the story was, which is sort of interesting, the story was that I was obsessed with him. That was the story. The reality was quite the reverse, and there was also the influence of this woman in his life, which was pretty negative. And there were two people that really had a kind of negative involvement with one another, and then them turning their attention onto me, and I really had a lot to deal with for almost a year, and actually the fallout from that was a little bit longer than that.
And your side of the story is that you did none of these things.
I definitely did not put any doll on anybody's doorstep, and I definitely was not obsessed with this actor, and I would never do anything to harm anybody on this planet, I mean, let alone somebody that I had worked with and had a very close working relationship with. I would never do anything to harm anybody, just because I would be too afraid to, just in terms of God, I would be too afraid to do that. I mean, and I would have no desire to do that.
So you feel you didn't do anything that anyone could categorize as harassment or inappropriate behavior?
I would say, within the context of show business itself, yeah, definitely not. And show business is a little bit crazier than other industries. I mean, keeping that in mind, it's like if the secretary, goes to work, she doesn't have to worry about, whether Michael Caine's breath smells like cigars, you know what I mean? It's not the same exact thing. I mean, it is a little bit crazier. Show business is, in general, a little bit crazier than other industries. But I'm sure that kind of stuff exists outside of show business, All
right, now leaving that part of it aside, have you been difficult to work with? Is there anything to that rap?
I don't think so. I mean, my personal feeling is I bring a lot of good energy to wherever I go, whether it's on a set or at home or, anywhere. But I've certainly had to deal with that accusation.
From where do the conflicts arise?
I guess sexual politics would probably be the area in which that arises. And I have learned a little bit more about how to contain my energy. Do you know what I mean? It's like in sports, somebody's emotion is considered a positive, But in acting, that's true to a certain extent, especially if you're a guy that's really true. You can walk in with a lot of emotion, and that's considered good, and people will bend over backwards a lot of times to put up with it, depending on how destructive it is. A lot of times they won't put up with it at all. But I walk into a scene or a circumstance on the set or in location or what have you, and I bring a lot of emotion with me. And I'm not talking about tantrums or yelling or anything like that. I'm just talking about good, positive energy, because you're going to be photographed and you're involved in a scene, and you don't walk in, going, I'm not really involved in this. You walk in wanting to put your best foot forward and putting a lot of energy into what you do. So I consider that a positive, and if somebody else doesn't consider that a positive, which is rare, most people that I've worked with consider it a positive, it usually has something to do with those lines blurring between whether we're working together or whether we're acting. And my opinion is we're acting, we're working. We're here working. Our emotions may be involved, but we're here working.
Should you have become a bigger star just on the basis of the work, or at least had the opportunity to become a bigger star after the breakthrough scene in the back of the limo with Kevin Costner in No Way Out? Did you think, after the reaction to that, the movie itself was well received, that one scene is the signature of the movie, everybody remembers it, did you think, boom, this is going to get it going?
Every movie they tell you that, but like Yogi Berra says, it ain't over till it's over. And I'm only 33 years old. I got a little power in me left. You know what I mean? It's not over until it's over. And when I can't be put in front of a camera anymore, and I'm wrinkly and I'm not good looking in terms of like being photographed anymore and acting, then I'll worry about whether I should have been a bigger star or not, because it ain't over yet. And I certainly don't have any fear about whether my potential as an actress is still intact. And whether anybody gets it or not, whether I ultimately become this big, big star or not, that's in God's hands. That's not in my hands. And that's not even in Hollywood's hands. You know what I mean? That's really in the audience's hands, ultimately. Because if I am in a movie, even if it's an independent movie that makes 150 million or 200 million, believe me, I'll be the best friend of everybody in Hollywood all over again. You know what I mean? It's that simple. It really is that simple. So whether I should be a bigger star, whether or not I should, you know, it ain't over yet.
I have a message for the director of Batman 2. How dare you not make time to see the Catwoman? Not even so much as granting me a meeting. How very rude of you.
I guess the next most eye-catching thing was the controversy over the Catwoman role in Batman. Now, as I understand it, you had been cast as Vicky Vale, which ultimately was played by Kim Basinger. You fell off a horse in the course of taking riding lessons, right? You broke your arm. Now, when the sequel is to be made, did you feel that because of that, they especially owed you something? Or was it because you felt you were 100% right for the Catwoman role, past history?
I felt both.
Doesn't matter.
I felt like I deserved 5 minutes of their time. And that's all I wanted, was 5 minutes of their time. I wanted 5 minutes to talk about it and to say, you know, this is my idea on Catwoman. And they couldn't give me that. It wasn't like I said, you have to give me the role. It was like, you have to give me 5 minutes of your time, because really, basically, every actor, all they really have as an actor, all you have is when you go and meet the people. You've got this much time to prove to somebody that you're worth it, right? It's like, you know, it's like sports. I mean, you get your audition, you either perform or you don't. You get one shot to get a role, and I felt like they weren't giving me that shot, and I felt that that was unfair under the circumstances of having put my body at risk and peril in the first place, that they could have acted a little more politely.
Now, when Tim Burton was here a while ago, I asked him about this.
Really?
We talked about it briefly.
What did he say?
Said
I can't imagine what he said.
He said he didn't hide in the bathroom when you came to see him, that he may have gone to the bathroom, but he wasn't hiding in the bathroom, and that the thing was more complex than could possibly be explained. And he seemed not to have any animosity, but he seemed to feel uncomfortable about the controversy.
I can see why he would feel uncomfortable about it, because on a certain level, you know,
Tim Burton being the director of the film.
Yeah, there's the way the business works, which is like any rough industry. It's not fair, and there are things that just happen, and people make their decisions, and there's people up in towers someplace going, no, we want Michelle Pfeiffer, you know, or whatever.
Hey, what's wrong with Michelle Pfeiffer?
And she was
A,
great.
she's a very good actress. B, she's bigger box office than you are.
Yes, that's right, and she was the best thing in that movie. She was the most interesting thing in Batman 2, I mean, in my opinion. And, you know, so that's one element of the business, right? And then there's sort of like the more human side of the business. And I think on the more human side of the business, I really got treated badly, you know? And maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe that has no meaning to anybody anywhere, but to me it does have meaning. Because I think ultimately what we are is, we are people dealing with people. And that if you ignore that, if you say, okay, it doesn't matter that we're people and it's just a business and all that really matters is the bottom line, you know, and we don't have to worry about treating people with decency, then we have a society that doesn't care anymore about how they treat people.
Why do you think they wouldn't see you for a few minutes, even if it was just a pretense?
I think that's the big mystery.
If what you're saying is correct, then why not just give you the courtesy of that, even if in the back of their minds they have no intention of casting you? It makes one think that they must have believed that you were really bad news for some reason.
I don't see how Tim could have thought that if he'd cast me in the first one. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, I think it was something else that had to do with something I'll never know, you know, like some weenie somewhere, you know what I mean? I don't know. But all I know is that it makes sense to me that he would feel uncomfortable, because there was a certain element of not treating people with the decency that is good for a person, you know, to treat people with.
All of these things, whether it's a little disagreement with Warren Beatty on Dick Tracy or whatever, all of these things create a certain image. Whether the image is accurate or not aside, has that actually helped to make you a bigger star?
I think it may have, yes. But I can't tell you for sure, because I don't know what would have happened if all of that stuff hadn't happened. You know what I mean? I have no way of knowing that. It's like I don't live in It's a Wonderful Life. But, you know, it seems to have created, what it seems to have done is create a lot of mystery even though I'm not like all that mysterious as a person, I'm actually pretty straightforward. And that's the only thing that I can really pinpoint that it seems to do. It seems to create a certain, gee, she must be really mysterious type of thing, you know. And ultimately, it seems to come out of the fact that I'm willing to stand up for myself and say, look, you know, that's pretty crappy what you're doing there. And that, for women in general, I think is a hard thing for them to do, although it comes automatically, naturally to me. I couldn't not do that, in fact. But it seems to me that a lot of the women that I know have a difficult time actually standing up for themselves. And if confronted on a sort of political level, you know, where their instincts should kick in and say, okay, just be quiet, you know, this will pass, and handle this the best you can, that's their normal response. You know, generally speaking, my response is sort of different from that, which is, you know, I believe people should really be accountable, you know, and they should know how you feel, because if they don't know how you feel, they're just in a vacuum.
How much of this is standing up for yourself, which everyone has to respect, and how much is just liking to be outrageous now and then, which is not a bad thing in and of itself? But there's an outrageous aspect of this, dressing up in the Catwoman suit, being photographed that way, you know, that kind of thing.
The Catwoman thing was something that I had to pay for almost more than the Woods or the Warren Beatty or the, you know, or the Batman thing, because those were events that people could actually on some level interpret as having happened to me, and, you know, in fact be forgiving in that situation. But the Catwoman was obviously something that I was behind, and that appeared to be something that was considered, you know, dangerous or unpredictable or crazy or weird or, you know, out to lunch or whatever. And when I look back on it, I guess I feel a little bit of remorse about the fact that I had to pay for it, you know, in the sense that I don't get called by every major studio yet and get asked, you know, to play their leading ladies, you know what I mean? And I think that's partly why, because that was a pretty outrageous thing to do. But ultimately, I wonder if you can understand this. It's sort of like people have different natures, and my nature was I sort of absorbed the Woods thing, then I absorbed the Warren Beatty thing, and then I, you know, absorbed the accident on or one was before the other, but the, you know, breaking my arm and having to like rehabilitate myself and deal with this. It was like not being treated with kindness or courtesy by the Warner Brothers people and by Tim Burton. It just kind of pushed me. It went, wait a minute, you know, it pushed me over a place that just made me angry, and I said, I'm not going to take this anymore. This is stupid. I'm not going to put up with this. And I said, instead of absorbing this myself and like getting an ulcer, I'm just going to throw it back. And that's what I did. I just went, no more. And I felt good about it then. And on one level, or a couple different levels that are hard to interpret, I feel good about it still. But in terms of being politically savvy, it definitely wasn't.
What is true about you that the public should know and you think they don't know?
That is a good question. I don't know if I want the public to really know anything that's really, truly me. I mean, it's true that I'm an honest person. You know, I'm a very honest person. I'm very direct. If you knew my husband, you'd probably see how mellow he is, and one of the things that he really appreciates about me is that I will tell him how I feel. I don't harbor stuff and make you guess. You know what I mean? Like some people that you work with, you know they're in a stew, but you don't know what it's about, because they're not going to tell you, and they're just going to punish you for them being in a stew. And you go, what's wrong with so-and-so? You know, they're walking over there and they're in some kind of funk. What's going on? You know what I mean? I will let you know if something's bothering me. I will say, you know what, I feel, and then I will share it with you, and I will give you the opportunity to know what's upsetting me. And some people may call that difficult, but most of the people that I work with and that I live with appreciate that, because it lets them know where they stand. It lets them know where you're at. So that's true. I'm an honest person, and truly what's true about me, I don't even know if I know that. You know, I think what's true about me is I'm a lot more humble than people realize. You know, I'm a lot more unconcerned truly with a lot of the stuff that I like participate in. I mean, like doing a big TV show or something, you walk out there and you go, okay, I'm on, it's my turn, and you know, and you laugh and you make jokes and everything like that. I mean, but I really do sort of do that as a job and put that on and say, okay, this is my job, I got to do a good job selling the movie and projecting myself and, you know, continuing my career. But when I go home, I'm not a person who watches a lot of TV or watches a lot of movies or gets into what people are saying about people. I'm very unconnected and isolated from a lot of that circuit stuff, you know, like what's happening and who's in and out and everything, because to me it's all like transitory, you know. It's like this life we live is very short. You want to be a good person. That's your priority.
You can see Sean Young in Carl Reiner's film Fatal Instinct, and if everybody's tongue was any further in his or her cheek on this one, they would break the skin. That's Fatal Instinct. I don't know. You're offering me a...
Tongue in the hand.
It was a great pleasure.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
See you later.
Thanks for watching Cleveland Live Music. It's awfully bright out here. I'd click on another one of my videos. Quit looking into the sun. Your mother told you not to do that. Please hit the subscribe button. And if you want to support the channel more, there's GoFundMe and Patreon information in the video descriptions. Ooh, ooh!